in November of 2021, you came to know the name Lia Thomas. My understanding is I had read that you were reading an article that had mentioned a female swimmer who went 1 minute and 41 seconds in the 200-yard freestyle. I hope I'm saying all these right. I don't know much about swimming, so I'm doing my best. But is that correct? And if so, what did you know about Lia at that point?
Right. So around that November time is about the middle of our season. And typically in that part of the season, you have every team going to a meets. And this is where your top times so far this year are posted. And so I was shooting for that national championship spot, and I was ranked, I believe, third. And so, obviously I'm curious of who's above me. And so I see this time posted that's just incredible, but it was a name I had never heard of, which, like any sport, your top athletes know your other top athletes, regardless of what school they go to. And so I see this name, and I'm shocked. I'm like, who is this person? They go to UPenn, which isn't typically a fast swimming school. They're a senior, and I've never heard of them. This is very bizarre. But I went back to training, focused on myself, and then a couple days later, an article was posted disclosing that Lia Thomas was formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the male side at UPenn. And so honestly, when I found out this information, I was relieved. I was like, oh, this makes total sense, no question in my mind how this person went the fastest time in all of college swimming by a landslide. And I thought for sure, the NCAA will never let it get to the point where we're competing against Thomas. So I felt like a weight was off my shoulders, and I was less threatened for that national championship spot. But I was proven very wrong.
So 2 questions for you. For people who don't know a lot about swimming, this 1 minute and 41 seconds, can you just contextualize that? How fast is that? Like, is that reachable? Is that something like, what does that mean to a female swimmer to see a time like that? Were you thinking like, oh my gosh, how am I going to catch that? Or like, what is there an equivalent that you can give for people who don't really know much about swimming?
Yes. So it's obviously being the fastest time in the country in front of all the female Olympians, in front of everyone from the ages 18 to 22 who swam that event, the fastest by probably 2 seconds at this point. And 2 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but we're measuring swimming in the hundreds. Right. So 2 seconds is a huge amount, especially in an event where it's not, a distance event. That event is something that at the national level is separated by tenths. And so to have someone beating the whole women's field by seconds, it is a huge difference.
So now you say you were relieved because you were probably thinking at that point, well, they're not going to allow Lia to swim at the NCAA, so this is not someone I'm going to need to compete with. What was your reaction when you heard that, in fact, Lia would be allowed to swim at the NCAA?
So from that November time up until we competed against each other in March, the NCAA was very wishy-washy. They would go back and forth saying, Thomas can't compete, Thomas can compete. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks before we actually competed where they said Thomas will be able to swim with the females. And I was shocked. I had no idea what this would look like. I had no idea the kind of media that would be brought to swimming. But I did know it was going to be a distraction to myself and the other female athletes at that meet. And I knew that it would cause a lot of controversy. And that's exactly what it's done. But to be in that position where you're racing someone who's spent 3 years racing against the best men and now is competing against females, it just almost felt like you were swimming with your hands tied behind your back.
Now, you say they were wishy-washy, the NCAA. Why do you think they were wishy-washy, and why ultimately do you think they made the decision that they did?
I think they were wishy-washy because they lacked any sort of accountability. They were looking for other people to make that decision. They were looking at USA Swimming to hopefully have guidelines in place that they could follow. They were looking at the International Olympic Committee for certain guidelines. But of course, no one was willing to, ultimately come out with a decision that was clear and that was based upon science and reason and logic and common sense. And so ultimately, I think they made a bad decision. And I think that they're realizing that, but of course, still no accountability is had.
So take me behind the scenes at that moment. What are the conversations like among the teammates, among you and the other women on the team, what's getting said about this decision that's been made, and how is everyone feeling going into the NCAA at that point?
It's extremely frustrating. That first day is the day that Thomas won a national title in the 500 freestyle. And the look of these poor girls on the pool deck who sat there and watched this, or the girls who were in the lanes next to Thomas who got destroyed, it was just utter heartbreak. It's disheartening to know that you dedicate your lives to an organization like the NCAA for them to completely turn their back and prioritize, men. And so there was gruntles of frustration. I can't even tell you how uncomfortable the locker room situation was. And like you said, it was a distraction. I think there was about 7 American records broken by obviously the fastest females in American history, but the media didn't hear a word about these females. All of the attention was centered around Thomas. And so it took a lot away from us and what it's taken for us to get there and the accomplishments that we achieved.
If you like the short clip, you can catch another one here, or you can catch the full episode right here.